Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and in today's video we're going to be trying to refur a vintage He-Man and the Masters of the Universe Grizzlor. Now, I was recently sent this Grizzlor on the right by Peter, and he looks sort of from a distance not to be in too bad condition, but actually when you turn him around to this side you can see at some point someone has sort of set fire to him. I'd say there's burn marks all up the fur. There's actually burn marks on his hand here, so he's looking in a rather sorry state, and I thought that this would be an ideal candidate for refurring, as I've never done it before. Lots of people have asked me to do it, and yeah, I was just waiting for the opportunity to have a go. So that's what we're going to try today. We're going to remove the fur from this Grizzlor, see what he looks like underneath, see if we can make a pattern from this old fur, and then put some new fur back on him, and hopefully get him looking like that. So yeah, as I said, this Grizzlor has been set fire to at some point. You can see there's burn marks on the fur here, so it's all gone sort of, well, it's sort of melted together. There's also burn marks on his hand here, which I think we can clean up. But really, he's not looking too good. This is what a Grizzlor should look like. This is the best Grizzlor I have. You can see his fur is actually in not too bad condition. If we turn him around, the back is a little bit rough, but he's looking quite nice and spiky. This poor chap, on the other hand, is not really even good for display. So my plan is today to remove the fur on this one, try and work out if we can make a pattern to replace it and put it all back on. So I've been onto eBay and I've found some fur that seems to look pretty much like this. It's not an exact match, but it's the best I could find. And here it is. It's called curly fur. This is a colour called malt brown. I only bought a small sort of amount of it, but there should be enough in here that we can have a go at refurring him. As you can see, it's not too bad. It's a little bit curly, but the overall effect, if I hold them together, the colour's a pretty good match. So yeah, this is what we're going to use. Basically, for choosing the fur, all I did was go onto eBay, see if I could find something that was a good colour match, and try and get the length of the fur about right. You can see here on this Grizzlor, the fur it's about 1.5 centimetres long, and so that's what I searched for, because the fur you can buy comes in all different lengths, and this is supposedly 1.5 centimetres long fur, which it is, but because it's a little bit curly, it doesn't look quite the same length, but I think it will do the job quite nicely. So let's get on. We'll try and remove the fur from this one and see what we can do. So poor Grizzlor, the first thing I think we need to do is to remove his arms, because then we can actually start to see what's going on underneath the fur. It doesn't look like the fur is stuck to the body, because you can actually sort of pull it away here and see bits of the underlying sort of plastic there. I think there's going to be a seam. Looks like there's a seam down the side here and down the side here. Not sure if there's one at the bottom, but I think I'm going to start by actually cutting across here, and that way we can probably peel this up and over the head. It feels like it's also attached around the face somehow, but I can't quite see how that is done. So the only way to do this is to cut this one off, and from that I should be able to make a pattern, because we can turn it inside out and get a rough shape for it. It's going to be a bit of a brutal process, but it's the only way I can see to sort of get this started. So yeah, let's take his arms off. Those should come off just like normal He-Man arms, like so, which they do. We can do that other one as well, like that. I can give that arm a clean. As you can see, there's burn marks all over that. I think that will just clean off, and maybe a little bit of sandpaper will get that off, but those arms aren't too bad. And now we can see, oh yeah, you can see this is all loose. Look, I can actually pull this around. So yeah, it's not going to be too bad to do. Right, I think I'll just get cutting, and we'll see what happens. There is no seam there, but yeah, I would guess how this has worked is it's actually pulled on from the bottom and then tucked into the head somehow. You can sort of feel it's not much going on behind the head there, but to get it off I'm going to have to start by cutting the bottom part, just so that we can start peeling this away. And there we go, that's Grizzlor's fur off. He doesn't look quite as impressive without the fur, and as you can see, the body is not a standard He-Man body. It's a very basic form. In fact, it's actually quite square. There's no waist joint there, and the head is not attached with any sort of peg. It looks like that head has been sort of glued on at the front, or at least the face has, but it's fine because I've managed to get the fur off, and I can see now pretty much how it's constructed. So I was right, there was no join at the bottom. It's one continuous piece with a little bit of sort of folded over there for the head. If I fold that back round, you can see that's the bit that goes over the top of the head, and then we've got this bit that goes underneath. So that bit, yeah, it sort of tucks up like that underneath the head, and then this bit, if I just turn it inside out, is over the top of the head like that to make his sort of face fully covered. So now what I've got to do is unpick all of this. I'm going to try and unpick it so that I can flatten it out, and then I should be able to make a pattern for it, because there's some quite key holes in the side. That's where his arms go. Then obviously we've got his legs at the bottom. But yeah, that looks like it's a fairly doable project, I'm going to say. So yeah, let me see if I can unpick this, and we'll flatten this out and hopefully make a pattern. And there we go, I've managed to undo it. It took a few minutes just to sort of unpicking the seams, but that is Grizzlor's sort of skin, I suppose, or his pelt unwrapped. So I can work out pretty much what's going on. That's where it should be joined. That's where I cut it. I've just made a few little marks on it. I've drawn some arrows so that I know which bits are joined together. That is the front of him, so he sits that way round. So you can see there's armholes there and a head hole at the top. And then we've got all of this bit, which is the sort of back part of it. There's another hole at the top here, and that folds over. This piece folds down like that and is sewn along these sides, so it's got a seam all the way around the edge, and then yeah, it just sort of pops on his body. It's going to be quite awkward to get it on him. I can see maybe that we have to do some sewing at the end. There's some bits here that feel like they should be sewn separately, but I think we can get this all to join together. There's no sewing on this bit here. So the next stage is to actually make a pattern. I'm going to scan this in sort of on my flatbed scanner, and I'll make a pattern, and then we can try and cut it out of this and see what we can make. It may or may not work, and it may be that I need to get some different fur, because this fur is a little bit thinner, but I think we can do something with it. So yeah, let's get a pattern made and we'll see what we can do. from those scans I was able to create this, which I think is a fairly accurate pattern of those bits of fur. This is the front, so you can see you've got the armholes there, and that's where his head goes through, and then that folds up around the back, so you can see there are his leg holes, and then it's sort of sewn along this edge here, and then this bit also is folded down, and that sews along this edge here, and again there's another head hole there, so you put the head through this one first, and then that one hooks over the top and sort of tucks in place. It's fairly sort of complicated, I would say, but I think that is how it's going to work. So I've already printed this out, as you can see, and I'm going to stick this onto the fabric that I bought, the fake fur, and get cutting. I've already stuck on the back of this double-sided sticky tape, so I'm going to remove the other part of the sticky tape, and I'm going to stick that onto my trousers just a little bit to take some of the stick away. You don't want it particularly sticky because it really does stick to this fabric, but just enough tack there that it will hold in place. So yeah, let's get cutting, and then we'll try and sew this together and see if it works. I'm hopeful it will, but as I say, this is the first time I've done this, so it's all new to me, and it's the first time I've ever worked with this sort of fabric as well, so it's going to be an interesting experience. But yeah, let's get this cut out and see if we can sew it together. Is very strange material to cut. I've never cut stuff with this sort of fur to it, and it leaves bits everywhere. There's bits of fluff everywhere, but as you can see, I've got a shape that I think is going to work, so I might as well do a quick test fit even before I sew this up. So what we'll do is we'll hook that hole over his face. That should fit over his face and sort of tuck in. Then we've got armholes here on the side, so they'll go around like that. Then that folds through his legs, that comes back round the back. So once we've sewn up these edges, and then yeah, I think that's going to work, and then that bit then tucks back over his face, so we can just tuck that over. You can see that that is pretty much going to work. I'm very happy with how that looks, and actually the fluff of this is quite nice as well. So let's get sewing. That does definitely fit. What we've got to do is turn this inside out and do a few little bits of sewing. So you can see where the leg holes are. If we fold that over like that, you want the edge of that leg hole to match. So we've got to sew along there. I've left about 5mm of excess fabric, so we've got to sew about 5mm in there. Likewise, we've got to sew along that edge there. And then this folds over this back bit and just sort of, again, sews down. You've got to sort of sew down this portion here till it all joins up. And then we turn everything sort of the right side out. So let's get that sewn up. But I'm very happy. I think that's going to work really quite nicely. It feels like it's going to fit. So just the sewing to do. And there we go, that didn't take much sewing at all. I've basically sewn along those edges there as I showed you, and then folded that sort of flap over at the top, which is this piece here, sort of folded over. That bit I wasn't particularly sure how far to fold down, so it could have possibly been folded down a bit more. I've overlapped it at the edges there, which is what it was like on the original one. So I guess this sort of tucks in. Essentially you're making a pocket that then gets turned inside out, and you put the figure in it and it sort of hooks over his face. So yeah, let's give this a go. So I've got to turn it the other way around, so inside out like that. So there should now be two holes at the bottom. That's where his legs go. There's a hole on that side which is for his arm, another one on that side. Then we've got a hole there for his face, and then that bit should tuck down, and there's another hole in here somewhere for the other part of his face, so it sort of all hooks together. Yeah, let's give this a go. Hopefully all of this will fit in. I imagine they did this with the legs on these figures and then popped the arms on, because I think the legs were put together before the body was put together on these figures originally. But we could always take these legs off and then reattach them if this causes an issue. I'm hopeful that this will squeeze through. It's like dressing a really awkward action figure in clothes. But, yes, a fair bit of give to this fabric. Yeah, right, that's the bottom part on. That's certainly starting to look right. And we've got to tuck his arms in, get those into the armholes there. Into there. Oh yeah, that's already starting to look a lot like Grizzlor. And that one hooks over his face, like that, and sort of tucks in the back. And then in here, we've got to sort of push his head in again, and this sort of tucks around. This didn't look like it was sewn at all, so hopefully this will just work. And then that tucks in like that. Move it all around. We've got to hook that in. Might need a crochet hook or something just to push that down. But you know what? That isn't bad at all. That really does look like Grizzlor. I'm impressed. I didn't think this would work. That is not looking too bad. Let me put his arms on and we'll see what he looks like with those on. But that actually fits really quite nicely. So I've now put the arms on and the chest arm, and you can see it's not really looking too bad at all. The fur is too short and too curly, but the overall effect of it is quite nice. I'm very happy with how that fits. There's a few little modifications I want to make to the pattern, because actually the holes that I cut for the head are too big. They need to be a bit smaller, and I think I can modify the holes for the legs as well. They are a little bit on the large side, but the overall effect is pretty good for a first go. What I've done though is I've ordered some different fur. You can see straight away that this fur is sort of shorter and a little bit curlier, whereas this stuff is longer. So I've been on to Etsy and had a quick look for some other malt brown fur, and I found one that has a 2 centimeter length pile, or 20mm pile, which means that it's longer like this, and it also is straight. So I've ordered some of that. When that arrives, I'll make a second version, or we can see if we can get this Grizzlor looking more like the original. Although I have to say, I quite like this sort of shorter look. It looks a little bit more like he does in the cartoon series, but I'm trying to get it to look as close to the original as possible. So I've ordered the fur. We'll wait until that turns up and we'll try making a second version of this. But the overall effect is good, and the overall pattern is not bad at all. Just needs a couple of little modifications to make it fit a bit better, but I'm very happy with how that is looking.
P-O-Y, P-O-L-L-O-I.
There you go, that's the new version made, and I'm already a lot happier with how this is looking. You see, if I hold it up to the original Grizzlor, that's not too bad at all. So let's swap this one out. If I remember rightly, we've got to sort of untuck bits. It's fairly straightforward once you sort of work out the process. So that's the top section. Oh no, which one do I untuck? Oh yeah, that's right, yeah, and then I take that bit over the top of his head, sort of over his face. There we go, and then this should all now slide down his body. Yeah, that's good, and we can remove that. So that's the prototype number one, I'll say. Let's put this one on so it's around the right way. That's the little sort of front piece. So there's a hole there for his face, there's holes on the side for his arms, and then we've got the leg holes at the bottom. So I'll just do this process again, and hopefully this will look a whole lot more like Grizzlor. There we go, I've got it all on. I've sort of tucked the fur in. You have to sort of tuck it in around his arms and around his legs. But that, I'm very happy with. That's really starting to look like Grizzlor. I think that's probably as close as I'm going to get. If I bring in my original one, who's still a little bit scruffy and possibly got slightly more fur, I think that's not too bad. That's going to be the closest I can get with the fur that I can buy. It may be there's better fur out there, but the comparison between that and the curly fur I was using, I'm much more happy with this. It's definitely looking a lot more like Grizzlor. It's not perfect, but it's almost there. And I think for display purposes and for my collection, I'm going to be very happy with how that looks. It's looking very nice indeed. And there we go, there's a proper comparison for you so you can see what the two look like. On the left is my original Grizzlor, and on the right is the one that I've now sort of put some new fur on. I actually prefer that one. I think this fur on the left, there's just too much of it. It looks really odd. So the slightly subtler fur amount on the right is what I would expect him to look like. It looks a lot more like he does in the cartoon. So if you want to do this yourself, then the fur you need is this stuff. It's sort of got a 2 centimetre long fur, and it's called malt brown. I got this off Etsy. There are probably loads of sellers around, so just go and have a search for yourself, and I'm sure you'll find something that does the job. The pattern I'll make a final few changes to, and I will add that to toy-polloi.com. So if you want to have a go yourself, go and grab that from there. I need to say a massive thank you to Peter, who sent me the original figure, the sort of burnt figure, and also to Sean, who very kindly helped me out finding the missing sort of armour that I needed for this figure. So thanks to those two for helping out on this project. If you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to check out some of my other He-Man and the Masters of the Universe videos. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.